Hello, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reading the Zettel and a few different videos, and we'll try and keep it fairly calm and peaceful as we go through it. That way you guys can understand the whole of the Zettel and be able to hear what Master Lictenauer and his students had to say. So we're going to start from the very beginning, and we'll be making multiple videos on the subject. So let's listen and see what his students had to say about the true art of fencing. Here begins Master Lictenauer's art of fencing with the sword, on horse and on foot, armored and unarmored. First and foremost, you should notice and remember that there is only one art of the sword, and it was discovered and developed hundreds of years ago, and it is the foundation and core of all martial arts. Master Lictenauer understood and practiced this art completely and correctly. He did not discover or invent it himself, as has been written previously, but rather traveled through many lands and searched for the true and correct art for the sake of experiencing and knowing it. And this art is serious, correct, and complete, and everything that proceeds from it goes toward whatever is nearest by the shortest way, simply and directly. When you want to hew or stab at another, it should be as if you tried to thread a cord to the point of or edge of your sword, and pulled or drew it towards his nearest exposure, for you should hew or stab in the shortest and surest manner, in the most decisive way. You should prefer to do nothing else, because proper fencing does not have broad or elaborate parries, nor wide fencing around by which people procrastinate and delay. You will still find many false masters, claiming that they believe the art of the sword grows better and richer from day to day, and that they have conceived and created a new art, but I would like to see anyone who could invent and perform a legitimate strike, or play that falls outside of Lictenauer's art. All they do is jumble and confuse the plays, and give them new names, each according to his own ideas, and they devise wide parries, and often want to do 2 or 3 strokes in place of a single one. They do this to be praised by the ignorant for the sheer liveliness of it, as they stand fiendishly and perform elaborate parries and wide fencing around, and, having no measure for their fencing, they deliver long and far-reaching strikes, slowly and clumsily, and with these that delay and overextend and expose themselves quite severely. This does not belong to earnest fencing, but only to play in the fencing schools for exercise and entertainment. For earnest fencing goes swiftly and precisely, with no hesitation or delay, as if measured and balanced by a cord or something similar. When you hew or stab at the man who stands in front of you, then clearly no strike backward or to the side can help you, nor any wide fencing with multiple strikes, nor other means by which you will procrastinate and delay, missing the opportunity to end it with him. On the contrary, you must strike directly forward towards him, toward his head or body, according to what is nearest and shortest, that you may reach and take him swiftly and rapidly, and deliver one strike is better than 4 or 6, delaying and waiting too long so your opponent wins the leading strike more swiftly than you, because this strike is a great advantage in fencing. It is written further on the text how Lictenauer only lists 5 strokes, along with other plays which are sufficient for earnest fencing, and he teaches how to perform them according to the true art, straight and direct, as closely as certainly as possible. Moreover, he leaves aside all the new inventions and confusing work of the false masters which do not come from this art. Now notice and remember that one cannot speak or write about fencing and explain it as simply and clearly as it can be shown and taught by hand. Therefore, you should consider and debate matters in your mind and practice them even more in play, so that you understand them in earnest fencing. Practice is better than artfulness, because practice may be sufficient without artfulness, but artfulness is not sufficient without practice. Also know that the sword is like a set of scales, so that if the blade is large and heavy, so must the pommel also be heavy, just as with a scale. Therefore, to use your sword certainly and securely, grip it with both hands, between the guard and the pommel, because you hold the sword with much more certainty like this, than when you clasp it with one hand on the pommel. You also strike much harder and much more strongly, because the pommel overthrows itself and swings itself in accordance with the strike, and the strike then arrives much harder than when you grip with the sword by the pommel, which restrains the pommel so that the strike cannot come strongly or correctly. Furthermore, when you fence one with another, take full heed of your steps and be certain in them, just as if you were standing on a set of scales, moving backward or forward as necessary, firmly and skillfully, swiftly and readily. Your fencing should proceed with good spirit and good mind or reason, and without fear, as written later. Accordingly, you should also have good measure in your plays, and not step too wide so that you may better adjust yourself to another's steps, backward or forward, however they go. And two steps often occur before one long one, so you will need to do a little run with short steps as often as you will a big step or leap. And whatever you want to perform cleverly, in play or in earnest, should be hidden from the eyes of your opponent, so that he does not know what you intend to drive against him. And as soon as you approach the point where you believe you could very well reach and take him, step and strike toward him brazenly, and then drive swiftly toward his head or body. You must always win the leading strike, whether it lands or misses, and thus allow him to come to nothing, as is written better further on in the general lesson. Moreover, it is always preferable to target the upper exposures rather than the lower, and then boldly and swiftly drive in over his hilt with hewing or stabbing, since you can reach him much better and more certainly over his hilt than under it. And you are also much more sure in your fencing like this, for the upper hit is much better than a lower one. But if it happens that the lower exposures are nearer, as it often does, then you must target them. And always go to the right side of your plays, because in all matters of fencing and wrestling, you can better take your opponent in this way than directly from the front, and whoever knows this piece and brings it well, they are not a bad fencer.